Hi, I'm Dr. Nathan Ho. You are watching the Coffee Break Interview video podcast. Today, I'm able to invite Dr. Abernathy back for Coffee Break Interview video podcast. And our topic for this podcast is mistakes and corrections in the business of dentistry. It's a topic that I'm so passionate about. Dr. Abernathy, thank you so much and welcome back.
Hey, how are you doing, Nathan? I'm glad to be here.
I'm great. Thank you so much. In the big business world, we often hear a lot about the success stories, but behind every success, there are obstacles, hardships, mistakes, and many times failures. And in dentistry, we also often hear a lot about the million-dollar, multi-million-dollar dental practices. And when we go to CEs, we often see the perfect cases being presented, but we know before they got to that level, most also made a lot of mistakes that we rarely hear about. So today, can you share with us some of your mistakes that you had made in your previous dental business that we can learn from?
No.
Let's start with the front department. Can you talk about the mistakes that you had made in this department that deal with insurance company, customer service, scheduling appointments, handling payments, and answering phone, etc.?
Well, I mean, let me, because since we're going to be talking about failures, I don't ever think that doing it wrong is a failure. Okay. It's just part of getting it right. So there were a lot of things that I did that didn't work, but you also have to remember, you have to couch this in the fact that this was 1974, 75. There was no cell phones. There was no internet. It was harder to communicate. I mean, the only timing device you had was your watch on your wrist, and we had no computers in the rooms and stuff like that. So it was a little different. And so I was at the cutting edge of all of this. And so as the technology helped us, I was a very quick adapter. And even though it wasn't anywhere close to being as good as is now, but we made it work. So when I think about failure, I think you only fail if you don't get back up and redo it, okay? And so I want to eliminate failure you need to get used to falling short occasionally, or being a little off the mark, but all you do is just adjust and go after it. Now, you asked me a question about the front desk. Before I talk about insurance or any of those other things, let me talk about the biggest mistake I ever made in hiring someone at the front desk. And this is going to sound counterintuitive, but and you could go on for hours and hours talking about this, but the takeaway would be, I think the mistake a lot of doctors make is hiring an employee for a great CV, like years of experience. Okay, now it just may be me, but what I found, when you're a young doctor, it's great to have somebody that knows how to file that insurance and do that, because you don't have to do that. But I've also found that unless I know how to do it myself, it's very difficult to delegate that to another person and then actually measure their performance. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
I wouldn't let my assistant do a temporary unless I could do incredibly good temporaries, right? Okay. So the biggest mistake I made in hiring was hiring people with a lot of experience. The problem you have there is we were so much at the cutting edge of adapting to new things and changing all the time, that when they got stressed, and it was a very busy office, when they got stressed, they would go back to the way they did it at Dr. Smith's office, or, well, we didn't do it that way. Okay. Yeah. So they failed to really learn it. You take somebody that doesn't know anything, all they know is what you tell them. You might appreciate this. I've taken karate off and on for, 40 years, something like that. But I had a guy that was a Muay Thai fighter and had 3 black belts, and he was kind of mean-spirited. And one time he caught me, took me down, and then took his shin and rolled it across the back of my calf, it can cut your calf in half. It really hurts. I spun over and kicked him in the chest and knocked him down and stood up. And I said, okay. And I said a bad word, and, okay, that's enough, and we're going to have it out right now. I think it was only about 5 seconds later before I was on my back with his foot on my throat, and he says, "You forgot something." He says, "I taught you everything you know. I didn't tell you everything I know." And so I'm always going to come up short in that. So again, I've hired people, like, for example, the first hygiene coordinator I ever hired. I never had a hygiene coordinator, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have an assistant, a hygienist, and a front desk person. Okay. But we got busy. We had 3 or 4 hygienists, and we needed to make sure, and we needed somebody else at the front desk. And I hired somebody. She'd never done this before. Now, she'd worked in banks. She'd worked with the public. She was fairly young. And so I just kind of made up the job description because I had never done it. I mean, I just I thought it through and wrote it down so that she'd have a guide, and there was nobody to train her because nobody else had. Well, I guess everybody had been calling patients and confirming them, but not really trying to keep the hygiene really busy. And so I told her she needed to make 100 calls a day. I had no idea you couldn't make 100 calls a day. But at lunchtime, she came up and she goes, Dr. Abernathy, can I talk to you for just a moment? I went, well, sure. And she goes, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this job. I said, it's 2:00 and I've only been able to make 60 calls, and she ended up being with me for 15, 20 years. Okay. So that was my biggest mistake in hiring. Now you asked questions about, what is it? Insurance. And what were the other things that you mentioned? Insurance.
Answering phone,
okay.
Customer service.
Well, customer service. Let's take scheduling. The worst thing I possibly did. You've got to remember, originally we had a paper file, that had the day, and you just wrote the name in there. Okay. Then we had computers. Okay. Now we didn't trust the computers, right? Because we're going, if that data is lost, I no longer have a schedule. Okay. There's no other record, and the backups in those days were not. Okay. So I kept a paper schedule and my computer going for almost 1.5 years. I mean, because I was scared. Okay. Yeah. So the worst thing I did with a computer is not actually reading the instructions. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not actually learning what a good backup looks like. We had a cascading failure of our server, and which was horrible. We had a server and we backed it up to tape drives, and then we backed it up to another CPU in the office. Okay, which was pretty good, state of the art 15 years ago. Yeah. And there was some type of cascading failure, and it went right through all of the servers, all the backups. We had no patience. We had no accounts receivable. I mean, I called the FBI office in, I think it's Michigan or Minneapolis, that searches down, pedophiles from their computers and stuff. It says, is there no way to recapture this information? It's, I've got thousands of, what am I going to do? It's toast. I mean, it was toast. And the way we fixed this, I hired 30 kids from high school. I typed up a letter to all my patients. And because I still had those paper charts, okay, I went through every paper chart, almost 20,000 paper charts, and sent every person in there a letter saying, this is what happened. The last time you were here, per our old record, you had these many cavities, and so they just filled in the blanks and sent them out. And so we went through about 20,000 in 3 weeks. But every day we'd wake up, go to the office with 5 hygienists waiting, all this other staff waiting. We didn't know if anybody would show up. We had to do it. Okay. So again, not reading the directions. From an insurance standpoint, I mean, this is pretty quick to fix, and I've never really understand why people struggle with insurance. I mean, we overwhelm them with information. For example, if they ever ask for an x-ray, we're always going to attach x-rays on there from the start, right? Because we're trying to close that gap, and so we always did that. I always took photos before and after. If I'm doing a crown, I always took a PA after I took the decay and filling out. Now, I didn't tell them that. I just sent them 2 or 3 x-rays. And of course, they have some stupid person looking at the x-rays on the monitor and going, oh my gosh, this tooth is just gone. I never had a crown turned down ever if I did that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I mean, again, it was just kind of adapting. And so opposite of doing this wrong would be get closer to doing it right every time. And you don't have all the doodah day to do that. I mean, it costs you money. And so I just would try something. I mean, I take the information I had, try to do it the best thing I do. If it didn't work, I adjusted. And I kept adjusting instead of being, caught like a deer in an oncoming car or something, So
those are really great tips. What about in marketing? Have you ever made a bad decision that wasted a lot of money?
I've had huge successes. I wish I could, and you can show me how to do this sometime. I'll show you the very first marketing piece I ever did. It was a picture of a cartoon bus with kids hanging out, and it was a back to school special in 1976. Okay, right after it was legal for us to, and I put it in a penny saver. 600 new patients.
Wow.
Okay, now.
I wonder if we can replicate that.
Do what now? You
I wonder,
duplicate it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. But you could tell, back then they didn't have graphic designers. I mean, I actually drew it and colored it myself.
Wow.
I mean, I'm pretty good at doodling and stuff. So, and it looks fine, but it was more difficult back then. Okay. And so, again, when I think about marketing, the biggest mistakes were not studying the demographics of the area that I was looking at. For example, we've got 4 minutes here. Let me just, if you go to Zip, ZIP, WHO, Zip-Who. I mean, you take any demographic site, but I know this one's current. Zip-Who. Put in your zip code. Okay. Now, granted, I understand you're not in the center of a big circle, but you could put in a couple of different zip codes and look at it. But you're only going to draw maybe, if you're in a city, 5 miles, something like that. If there's a river in the way, you won't even get people from the other side of the river, the other side of the expressway to come across very often. So looking at those demographics, the first thing it lists is income level. Second is cost of living, which would, for example, if you look at Connecticut, income level is going to be around $65,000 average. Cost of living is 350% higher than any other place in the United States. So that 65 alone sounds good, right? But once you overlay it with the cost of living, it's like just above poverty. I mean, I'm teasing, but it's not 65,000. Like we're talking about. Yeah. And you go down the line, you look at the educational level. I mean, the good thing about higher education level is that they will seek out and keep their teeth, right? They'll seek out professionals to do it. The bad thing, well, let me ask you this: if you had an income level of 150,000 a year, good or bad?
It depends.
Okay, why is it good?
It's good that it's 150. That's a lot of money.
Yes. And why is it bad?
It's bad if I were to live in a state like New York, that my cost of living is 120,000.
Right. Okay. But there's something else. Think about it. If you make over $100,000 a year, what have you done? Well, probably you went to college. Probably likely. You came from a middle-class family. Probably you've always gone to the dentist. Probably, and I think I said this the last time, when I graduated, the decayed, missing, and filling was 12.1 per adult. In the millennials and Gen X's, it's 2.3.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the demand for our services is going down. So high incomes, but they don't have any need for dentistry. Okay, I find the sweet spot to be around 45,000 or around 65. I mean, it's okay if it's a little higher, but I mean, you need people with crappy teeth. Age, let's say the average age was 30. I mean, what do they need in a dental practice? A cleaning, a filling, that's it. Bleaching, that's it. You're not going to do a lot of crown and bridge. So the race demographics, and this isn't racist, but the higher the white population, the more utilization you have of dentistry. Hispanic, Black communities where you're in the South or in Texas, right? Again, they're going to get their kids in, but they don't come in so often for anything cosmetic or anything. But nicest people in the world, hardworking, but it's more of a needs-based type of deal. So all of these things matter. So the biggest mistake I made in marketing was not studying my audience.
Those are great tips. Let's talk about employees real quick, as they are the foundation in a dental practice. Have you ever made any mistake in training and managing your employees, and how can you keep them motivated all the time and stay with you long term?
Okay. And this is a lot. I mean, I'll do it in a few minutes. I mean, 5 minutes, but this could be like 10 podcasts, I mean, it could go a long time. Okay. So when I think about staff, the fundamental underlying matrix that we created in our business, and it's in that Super General Dental Practice book, okay? And it discusses a chapter about each of these three areas. My practice was always purpose-driven, doctor-led, staff-owned. Now, this isn't going to mean a lot to you unless we had the time to discuss each one of these as a standalone part, but they're in the right order. Purpose-driven, ultimately, it's the why. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? 2, really, doctor leadership, is one of the things that's really lacking. I think most doctors prefer, and I hear this from clients all the time, I don't want to deal with those crazy staff members, I just want to do the dentistry.
You're right.
You're in the wrong frickin' business, dude, or dudette. That's not going to work, okay? It just doesn't work. And so, and the last thing is staff ownership. And the way you phrase the question, it kind of makes me want to settle on the staff ownership side of it. When you say motivate, you cannot motivate your people. Vince Lombardi, coach of the Green Bay Packers, just won the Super Bowl. He was an ugly little guy with a big space in his teeth and really curmudgeon-y kind of guy, always wore a hat. Just won the Super Bowl, and they've got him in front. And this was a time where, they NBC, ABC, CBS, there wasn't the Fox, but the big deals were right up front, and all the little stations were behind. But they were all trying to ask him a question, and he answered 1, 2 questions, and then some guy in the back goes, "Coach, how do you motivate your players? How do you keep your players motivated?" And he goes, "Who said that? What did you say?" And he was like, "What did you say?" And he goes, "How do you motivate your players?" I've never seen him take his hat off. He takes his hat off and looks at me and said, "Son, my job isn't motivating my players. My job is to keep 11 motivated players on the field. You got that?" And then he walked out of his Super Bowl interview. He was so upset that you think my job is motivating these idiots. There are no franchise players here. You either perform or you're gone, Okay, so back to the staff. They come through the door either motivated or they're not. It's an internal thing. So I hire people for these 2 things. This is the 90% of the hire. They're self-motivated and they've got incredible people skills. Those are the 2 things you cannot train. Now, you can incentivize people with money. You can share the profits, and that'll get them to focus about the business of dentistry, but it doesn't change their fundamental nature of not being motivated. And you'll figure this out. You'll have these highs and lows in staff. They'll come and every 2 years they're gone. The average stay for an employee in my practice was 14 and a half years. Now, the only reason it was that low is that I hired doctors like you that became my partners who had younger staff. I mean, most of them have been there 30 years. I mean, no one left. I mean, hardly ever. I fired 1 person in 40 years.
Wow.
So again, I had people quit, obviously. I had people move because I was in a bedroom community. But the average stay was still 14.7 years.
That is amazing.
So if we have the time sometime, I would like to take those as separate, purpose-driven, doctor-led, and give you like a 7-point bullet deal. It wouldn't take 15, 20 minutes. But then you'll understand. But you need to read that Super General Dental Practice book because that will let you go ahead and get ahead of us. And then the trouble with writing anything, whether you're reading my articles or my books, is that I write like I talk, which may not be good. I'm not a very good writer. But, you're trying to pick the right words to convey the thoughts that you have and the history that you've created in the systems and protocols that you have. And oftentimes that falls short. But if you know the bullet points and then I explained it philosophically and give you an example of each, you go, now I understand what you're talking about, right? So
yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So have you ever had any emergency exit strategy? And it's not to exit the building, but to exit the business of dentistry if something were to happen to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you always need to do the obvious things: life insurance, disability insurance, review it every 2 to 5 years and make sure that's done. I always moved to getting out of debt, okay?
Yeah.
And I always knew how much money I'd need to retire. In fact, I think and you may not remember this, but when we first talked on the phone, I asked you, well, how much longer you want to practice? And I don't know if it was you or your partner, but one of you said, well, I'm just kind of starting practice. I mean, how do I know when I want to stop? You need to know now, or you won't strategize to make this happen. I can send this to your folks if you'd like, but it was given to me by Naomi and Jim Rohde, the largest medical and dental printed supply company in the United States in Phoenix. And it's called the 10-Year Planner. And it's set up to ask you questions about different aspects of your life, like your physical self, your financial self, your intellectual self, your business, your family self. Okay, and it's done in this format. It's today. How old are you? So, Nathan, how old are you?
35.
35. Okay, how do you feel about that? A plus or a minus?
Plus.
Okay, good. Now, let's fast forward 10 years later. What's the date now? Okay, so it's whatever the date is here, add 10 years to it. So it's 2027,
Yeah.
28. Okay. Okay. How old are you now?
45.
Damn, you're getting old, dude. Okay. How do you feel about it? Plus or minus? And so you go down to these questions and it starts making you future focused. You start thinking about not just making the pay deal this week, but you're thinking about the ultimate. And that's kind of what Stephen Covey said in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The number one trait these super successful people had was they always began with the end in mind. But
Yes.
most of us spend more time planning our vacation than we plan our future. And so, again, and I kind of got off the track here, but when your original question wasn't that so much as the exit strategy. This may sound counterintuitive, but when some of the Spanish explorers hit South America, they burned their ships just to make it clear that, guys, we either survive because we're not going back to Spain, okay, until we're successful. I kind of burned those bridges in my mind that I never entertained the fact that I could fail. Now, in a way, that 10-year planner is goal setting, right?
Yes.
Well, thinking negative thoughts, I mean, more than just, okay, checking the boxes. I've got my insurance. I'm saving my money. I've got a plan for getting out of debt. So if I die or I'm disabled, I'm good. Okay, everything's okay. The problem occurs when you live. And for most doctors I talk to in their, late 40s, mid 50s, thinking about an exit strategy, is their best strategy is at about 62, they step into the street and get hit by a bus because they never started when they were young to plan what this was going to look like in the future. Now, this 10-year plan, just to give you an idea, I did that at a seminar in 1975 in Williamsburg, Virginia. She had us put it in an envelope and seal it and not look at it for an entire year. Well, I lost it, okay? And 3 or 4 houses later and kids and stuff, just 10 years later, I went back and I found it. I just accidentally found it and I opened it. It was about 3 months over 10 years, okay? So it was about that 10 years. Yeah. It asked, are you married? At the time, I was not married. But I put yes in 10 years. How do you feel about that? How many kids do you have? And I said 3. And one of our children is a daughter that I adopted. And we had 3 back then.
Yeah.
Income level. Back in that time, $100,000 practice was 10 times what most people were doing. But I put $1 million. We did $1.2 million that year. Now, I know that's not that much now.
Yeah.
Okay? But
a lot.
Something happened when I put that on a piece of paper. It committed something inside me to go down that path and eventually get there. It's so powerful, and I know it sounds hokey, but it works, and it works every time. So every year I sit down for about an hour, and I do that 10-year planner again every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can send it to you, and you can do with it whatever you want to.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to fill that plan out. So I heard that only 3% of people that actually have written goals.
Yes.
Why is that? Why is the number so low?
Well, I mean, it's, only 4 to 5% of dentists ever become financially independent. The average person that is listening to this podcast won't act on anything that we suggest.
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost like they think the world, it's all about me. Things will work out. I mean, now, again, I'm not worried about things working out, but I'm going to be proactive about making sure they work out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it is right that only 3% do it, but it has to be, it can't just be writing down the goal and not looking at it. It can't just be writing down the goal and looking at it without having a date and time to make that happen. Okay. I mean, it has to be done a specific way. I had, we moved to this big house. I think it was about 10,000 square feet, with under roof. Okay. And I couldn't afford it, but my cousin basically gave it to me. He sold it to me for $500,000. It was on 2 acres and swimming pools. I mean, I couldn't afford it. He just wanted me to live there, and he was super wealthy. But in my bathroom, the toilet, okay, so separate male and female toilet. On the wall, when I sat on the toilet, I had my goal sheet, and I created a goal sheet that was written, but I also had pictures, visual images to implant in my brain. Every time I got into a car, back then it was cassette tapes rather than CDs, but I listened to motivational speakers. It'd be like going and watching a TED Talk, right? Every day, going to work and coming back, feeding my brain. But I had up there a black 911 Porsche that I couldn't afford. Okay, now fast forward 4 years, 5 years, Christmas. Wake up, we exchange gifts and stuff. She kind of goes, well, I've got something for you here. And I open it up, and there's keys. And I said, well, what is this? And go outside, and it's a black Porsche. Now, she paid cash for it. Her grandmother passed away, and in a little bitty town. And as it turned out, she was right on the main street, and she was on an acre and a half, and it was worth like $27 a square foot. And so she just did it. Now, you're going to say, oh, yeah, but your wife did it. You didn't do it. It's just like the world lines up to help you get there. It focuses your thoughts in a way that gray decisions go away. Because if you truly have a goal, the answers to almost any challenge will be black and white. You'll be able to say yes or no, rather than just not making a decision or putting it off or maybe, I'll do it next week. But if you're real strong about this, it works incredibly well. So.
It sounds like magic.
It is. But it's supernatural almost. I mean, because you can't explain it. I mean, you can't explain it, but anyway.
But you seen the result from super successful people out there.
Oh yeah, I've seen successes from just like forcing you or another person. I said, no, you need to make this goal. And then when I call them up, I said, well, what have you done? And I have a goal sheet I can send you. You can send it to your folks if you want to. Yeah. That it may take an explanation. So if I send it to you, you might want to take 2 minutes and let me show people how to fill it out.
Yes.
But I'd be glad to send that to you. I'll send it to you right after we get off.
That's perfect. So I got this goal sheet right here from
good.
And this on Facebook right here. It said eat the frog I have to eat today. So it's daily goal and the tasks that I need to contribute to my 6-month quarterly goals. So I have it, but I would love to have your goal sheets as well.
But they also have apps you can do this for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, which are really cool because you can put reminders that just pop up on your phone like a text message or an email. And so I really think I'd probably use my smartphone if I were doing it now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But the key is to look at it, right?
There is one thing about putting on a piece of paper. There's something about our psyche that when we take a pen and we sign our name to it, it's like a binding contract that we signed. And no matter how we feel, when we make a commitment by doing that, it's stronger than just not writing it down or not signing it or something. So
that sounds like what you taught us about having patients write their address on the recall card.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Dr. Abernathy, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing us your mistakes, failures, as well as your insights for all of us to learn from. You have helped so many dentists, and we really appreciate you. So before we go, do you have any last thought for our audience?
Yeah, you need to go download that book. Greatest Version of Dental Practice, because it really was an effort on my part to give you,
Yeah.
not to tell you what to think,
Yeah.
but to teach you how to think about your practice
Yes.
philosophically. And so I think it would be a good start for anybody. And I don't have anything to sell you, so I mean, just
Yeah.
really, you need to go read it. Okay.
I will. Thank you
you.
so much. And
Okay.
next time, take care.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.